The first way you can trick yourself into being productive is by using momentum goals. This is a term that I've come up with and I think they are so powerful. So let's think about a normal goal that people have. Let's just say like running. They want to do running 3 times a week. But the problem is when they're thinking about going running, they're like, oh, this is rubbish, this is boring, this is going to be a lot of hard work. Like when you've been running, when you've come back, it's great, but the bit before is horrible. For example, you may be putting off certain things in your research career. You may be like, oh, I need to do this presentation. I need to write this report. I need to write this paper. All of these things beforehand are really, really annoying. And no matter if you put them on a list and you say, write this paper, like that goal does not get it done. A momentum goal is when you actually have the goal of setting up the momentum for yourself. For example, in the running example, you need to make sure that the goal isn't to go for a run, but rather it's to put on your work clothes and walk to the end of the street. And then at the end of the street, you can decide, I'm not going to run. Or, yeah, I'm feeling great. I'm going to go for a cheeky run. Those are momentum goals. So, for example, if you're writing a report that you've been putting off, the goal isn't write the report. The goal is sit down at your computer with a cup of coffee, open up everything that you need to start that report and do writing for like 5 minutes. That is a momentum goal. And these momentum goals were absolutely foundational, fundamental in my success during my PhD and my postdoc, because I was able just to focus then on making sure I set up the momentum for success rather than having this big lofty goal that I look at and go, oh no, that's boring and horrible. Give them a go for yourself. The goal should be the momentum, not the outcome. The second way I trick myself into being productive is by using temptation bundling. So in my PhD, I loved listening to podcasts, but it was a rule for myself that I would not listen to podcasts unless I was in the lab. They changed the rules, which meant you weren't allowed to have earphones in the lab, but I did it anyway. I just covered them up or took them out when people walked past the lab. Nonetheless, anyway, don't sue me for that, Newcastle University. But ultimately, all you have to do is find something you want to do and you enjoy doing. In my case, it was listening to Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, and bundle that with something you need to do. It may be working out. It may be just doing something that isn't normally the best thing that you want to do right now. But if you pair it with something that you love that you can do at the same time, brilliant. Audiobooks, podcasts are brilliant for doing that. If I need to do something such as listen to Persian, so I'm learning Farsi for the last 3 years, I'll be like, you know what, I'll go for a walk. I'll do that while doing something in the garden. That example of temptation bundling just makes it so much easier to trick yourself into being productive and doing the thing you want to do. The third way I used to trick myself into being productive is by using what I call landing pads. These landing pads are different for different activities. For example, the landing pad for writing for me during my PhD and my thesis writing time, it was the library. That was a landing pad. It was quiet. It had everything I needed to do that task. Another landing pad for me was the lab. A lab where I would only do research and I would only do that. Another landing pad for me was my office. In fact, my office was my landing pad for fun. It's where I would talk to people. It was where I would sort of like browse the internet for anything but research. And I was making sure that each landing pad had a particular role in my life. These landing pads could be sort of like dispersed across the different areas of your life. You could have one in a university library. You could have one in your office. You could have one in your lab. I know one person who purposely set up a landing pad of peer-reviewed papers in his lab, which means while he was waiting for something to finish, he'd sit on that landing pad, he'd look through papers. That's where he made sure he actually read the research, because he knew elsewhere there were just distractions everywhere. So think about like 3 or 4 different landing pads you could set up in your life where you only do one thing, and getting into the right state of mind just makes it so much easier when it's sort of like location based. Give it a go for yourself. Let me know in the comments if it is useful for you. The fourth way I would trick myself into being productive is by using time traps. Time traps are a literal time that you should just focus on doing something. So I would set my countdown timer on my phone, on my watch, on my computer for like half an hour. And then I'd say when that beeps, I can do something else. But until then, I'm only focused on this task. a lot of the time, I didn't even get to the end of the 30 minutes timer. But importantly, it was about making sure that I was sat down in a place focused on one task for a certain amount of time. Other days, it felt like it was easy. The little beeper would go and I'd be like, oh, really? That was 30 minutes. But the time trap just means you've got focused attention time. Focused attention time is so very important because when our focus and attention is scattered across everything, we struggle to sort of like focus and be productive on one thing. So make sure that when you are sat down and you set this timer that you are only doing one task, you turn off notifications for emails and you only have one tab open, like for example on your internet browser if you're looking for papers or doing something online. That way you can be sure that the time trap will work in your favor, because otherwise you're just time trapping yourself into a load of different things and that doesn't work. Time trap and focused attention is where you can trick yourself. The fifth way that I made sure that I tricked myself into being productive was by using urgency on lists. Now, when I first sit down every day, no matter what day, I write a big old list, bonk, 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 of all of the things I think I should do. I let my brain run wild because it's important that your brain gets rid of all of those things. It feels like a cleansing activity. A big old brain fart right onto a piece of paper and then walk away from that piece of paper, have a cup of coffee, come back, and that piece of paper will just sort of like change, because what you want to do then is highlight the urgent tasks, the 2, maximum 3 tasks that you should do that day. Everything else can wait. Now, I've got a load of admin tasks on my list at the moment. Look, this is what it looks like today, and I just have like 2 things at the top. I put a big 1 and a 2 next to it to make sure that I do those 2 things and nothing else. The other things are literally distractions. And then when I've done those 2 things, I can go through and be like, oh, what is a little task that takes me less than 2 minutes? I'll do that right now. But setting up this urgency list for yourself is so very important. Focus on the important activities and not just on the noise. Allowing yourself to do that brain fart and then having a look at the urgency and the importance of each one of those and only selecting the top 2 means that you just trick yourself into doing the most important stuff. Once you've been doing this for a little while, you actually realize that you can actually ignore a large part of what you think should be done that day because you can squeeze it in later after the important task. The problem is it's better to do that one big important task than all of those tiny little things that just feel just as important but take up just as much time but don't have the same impact and feel productive. That's not how this works. Do the big important tasks first and then fill in the little gaps afterwards with all of those little bits of minutia that the day throws your way. Yuck, I hate them, but I still do them after my big tasks. If you like this video, go check out this one where I talk about what 9 out of 10 PhD students get wrong about time management. I think you'll love it.